HBTV, where I am. I'm Harry Binswanger, whence the HB. I'm a philosopher who advocates the philosophy of Ayn Rand. And today we're discussing a topic near and dear to my soul: religion versus morality. Religion versus morality. Religion is the destroyer of morality. Well, how do we approach this? We approach it by explaining what religion is and what morality is. What is religion? Well, everybody knows approximately. Isn't that good enough? No. So I worked out a definition of religion. Religion is a set of beliefs based on faith in the existence of a God, that is a supernatural mind that rules the universe and to whom man owes unquestioning obedience. Religion is a set of beliefs based on faith in the existence of a God, i.e., a supernatural mind that rules the universe and to whom man owes unquestioning obedience. You know, Islam sums it up in the word Islam. Maybe it's the word Muslim. I don't know. I guess it's Muslim. It means one who submits. Religion is submission, the acceptance, the obedience, the kneeling, the bowed head, the abasement of yourself, particularly of your mind. Last time, my topic was faith, an ice pick to the brain. And the main point of that was that faith is not a means of coming to know things or getting in cognitive contact with anything. It's another word for imagination. It's a word for making things up, pretending to oneself and calling it something other than pretending. So religion as a set of beliefs based on faith really comes down to religion as a set of beliefs based on the imaginary being who is posited as having created the universe, created man, ruling the universe and man, and requiring submission to him. But it's all imagination. There isn't any rational process by which you can get from this world to another dimension, a spiritual being who had a consciousness that has no body, that's invisible, and that you should spend your life bowing and scraping to and praising. We'll get into why this is a slap in the face of morality, but let's first ask, what is morality? Well, Ayn Rand's definition is very good. Morality is a code of values to guide man's choices and actions. Morality is a code of values to guide man's choices and actions. So let's unpack that a bit. It's a code. It's not a set of beliefs. It's not a list of commandments. It's like a law code, an organized, structured, systematic set of principles to guide man's choices and actions. It's a code of values. What does that mean? Well, that gets into the whole basis of this discussion. A value is what? A value is what? Well, it's something good for you that you're after. Yeah, good for you. A value is something you care about, and therefore you go out and act to gain it. or if you've already got it, to maintain it. For instance, I recently bought an antique car. I'm putting a lot of time, effort, and struggle and money into making it run right. It's a 60-year-old car. That is a value. I care about it. I direct actions toward first buying it and then maintaining it, which turns out to be much bigger of a job than I thought it would be. But there are more philosophical values like self-esteem. It's a value to you that you are able to judge yourself positively. You want to respect yourself. You want to know, you want to be confident, know that you can get what you're after, that you can succeed in life. The conviction that you're able to live and are good, are worthy at living is self-esteem. That's a huge value. It's a more philosophical, actually even psychological value. Why is it a huge value? Because if you don't believe those things, you'll die. What do you mean? Well, if you think I can't do anything, there's food there on the table waiting for me, but I can't eat it. I don't know how to eat it. Pretty bizarre, but taking it to extreme. Or to eat, I've got to get money. I don't know how to get money. Or to survive, I have to get good medical treatment for my cancer. I don't know how to do that. All I know is to listen to what other people say. Or I'm no good. I hate myself. I don't want to live. I haven't got any motive to get up in the morning. I can't act. I'm going to just lie here, develop bed sores until I die. That's not me reporting for those of you who tuned in late. That's the attitude of someone who doesn't have self-esteem. It's intended to show why you need, in order to go on living, to think you can do things. You are competent and you are worthy. You are good. You are worth struggling to preserve. So self-esteem is an example of a huge value. My car is an example of small concrete value, and there are all kinds of values in between, like freedom. Freedom is good. Without freedom, there won't be anything for you to go after, and if you try, you'll be arrested. Slavery is not conducive to anyone's life. It's anti-life. I mean, I think I take these things as obvious. That's why I'm not taking any controversial examples here. So a value is something that requires action as opposed to gravity. Well, gravity is good. If there weren't gravity, we'd float off, but you don't have to do anything for there to be gravity. It's something that calls upon you to act because your life depends upon it. That Ayn Rand identifies as the source of values, the alternative you face of life or death. If you didn't face that alternative, if you were like a stone who could just lie there and didn't have to act to gain end or keep anything, as she puts it, there would be no such thing as what's good for you or bad for you. Certainly, there wouldn't be any code of morality to guide a stone's choices and actions. It doesn't have any choices and it doesn't take any actions, and there's nothing that is good for it or bad for it. But you are a living being who does make choices and who does need to act in the face of the alternative of your life or death. You do face that alternative. Now look back at religion. Why do I say it's religion versus morality? Do you need to act? No. No, this religion says no. All you need to do is believe. Blessed are the lilies of the field, for they neither sow nor reap. They neither spin nor toil. Going out, choosing values, pursuing them, getting them, enjoying them, using them, all that has nothing to do with goodness, according to religion. Goodness is a kind of inner glow that you get from, in the Christian version, letting Christ into your heart, accepting the gift of salvation. Okay, I accept it. Now I'm good. Maybe you have to get baptized in a river or have it sprinkled over your head. Maybe you have to mumble prayers. But there's no idea of, hey, I've got a life. It's limited. What can I do to achieve something in this life? That is completely alien to the spirit of religion. The spirit of religion is one of submission, of moral slavery, in effect, of being God's slave, praising him, obeying him. And what does he ask you to do? Not go out and get rich, not find friends and cultivate them, not create or enjoy artworks. No, what he commands is that you kneel down, chant certain words, and don't do a lot of things. Don't have any other gods before him. Don't bear false witness. Don't be jealous of your neighbor. Don't kill. So there's a lot of things you are not allowed to do because God commands that you not do them. But there's no values. There are things to avoid, but there's not things to do. Well, maybe with one exception. You're supposed to serve your neighbor. That's a contradiction that we'll get into because your neighbor is supposed to serve you as well, and neither of you can act for yourselves, but you can act for someone who isn't you. Blessed by the fact that he isn't you. He may not be great, but at least he's not you. So for you to serve him is to serve something better than yourself. But everybody then is both better than everybody else and worse than everybody else, because everyone is supposed to be given to, but not receive. Nice trick if you can do it. I mean, it's actually not a nice trick. It's just a senseless, self-destructive, traditional nostrum of religion. So in a rational philosophy, a moral code, as I said, is a guide to values, a guide to what you should do within what you can do, within what you can choose to do, to get what is good for you, to get values. Good for what? Good for your life. In the Objectivist Ethics, which I advocate, the ultimate value is your life. There's nothing higher than your life. Your life is the infinite. You are God to yourself. You should be God to yourself at any rate. You should treat yourself the way the religions demand you treat God, which is to have reverence for, to regard as sacred your being. Now, also the word choices is in there. Morality is a code of values to guide man's choices and actions. So the objectivist ethics that I advocate, the only one that makes any sense, and there's not a big array of ethics out there to choose from. There's about 3 attempts at ethics outside of religion. The objectivist ethics holds that Ethics is really a manual, like a user manual for success in life. And not just success in life, but at living. It's the manual for your survival. Religion is geared against your life. Its allegiances to God, heaven, the afterlife. This world is just a tryout. This world is just a big, long audition to see if you're ready to play your role in heaven. Now, in terms of, versus morality, consider religion versus all that. Consider what religion holds to be the penalty for disobedience. In irrational morality, the penalty for disobedience is failure. You don't get what you want. But it's not obedience. If the user manual clearly says, put this into that, and you don't do it, it won't work. Whatever it is, the computer or the gadget or whatever won't work. And it's the same with morality. If you don't produce, you won't survive. Productiveness is a virtue in the Objectivist Ethics. Under religion, it's sin. It'd be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. I'm looking at on the other screen, looking at the Sermon on the Mount. I'm looking for a juicier one. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake, God's sake. That's why they flew the planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Because if you get people, your enemies, to hate you and sacrifice and surrender your life, you go to heaven. Martyrdom is the big jackpot of virtue in the Islamic religion and at root in Christianity. I mean, who's the big hero of Christianity? I think it was a guy who let himself be crucified, knowing it was coming, let himself be tortured to death on the cross for the sake of the sins of others. Now, does that strike you as a moral ideal? You are going to be tortured and die. And you just have to imagine what kind of torture it would be to be strung up on a cross for 3 days with soldiers poking spears into you occasionally. And then you die. And that is wonderful because by doing that, some sort of ransom is paid to a super powerful evil figure called Satan, who for some reason an omnipotent God has to pay off. But forget that part. Well, don't forget it. Let's put it aside for the moment. What kind of morality says it's good to be tortured and killed for the sake of other people you don't even know? There's no justification for that. Your life is the only life you have. Now, of course, that perspective is not the religious perspective. The religious perspective is you are God's slave. This world is an illusion that God sets up to see who's going to heaven and who's going to hell. And those are the reasons If there are any reasons, the reasons to be moral for religion is to get your reward in heaven and avoid your punishment in hell. Now think for a minute about hell, because nobody can concretize what heaven is like. It's just, angels strumming harps. I mean, it sounds very boring. And even Dante in the Divine Comedy couldn't make it convincing. But hell is physical torture for eternity. You're in fire being burned, but for some reason you don't burn up and go away. You just keep being burned forever. All manners of torture are thought up by these mystics who imagine things, but it's going to be horrible, unimaginably horrible. Not for a day, not for 3 days like Christ, not for a year, not for 1,000,000 years, but without end, on and on and on, nothing but excruciating pain forever, without end. For what? Why? Why are you being punished? Well, you disobeyed God. Or else, even a lower view, you didn't know and agree with the Christian philosophy. You didn't believe, you didn't say some prayers. You were born before Christ. You were a Greek, like you were Aristotle or Aeschylus. You are going to pay for that, buddy, forever. Why? What's the basis? Well, it's because man stinks. Man is rotten, putrid. Why are you proud, O mud? Said the Pope in about 1200, Pope Innocent III. And he actually said man stinks. And he concretized that, but we won't go into that here. I love reading it because it's so revealing. So you are sinful by nature. And there's the story of the apple in the Garden of Eden and so forth, which is to put a sort of veneer on it. If you can accept inherited sin, some ancestor of yours 4,000 years ago disobeyed God and ate an apple. So you have to burn forever. Excruciating pain. Think of the worst pain you've ever had. You have that forever because some guy 4,000 years ago ate an apple when he wasn't supposed to. That's morality? Okay, but that, as it says, even that story is a veneer. It's just you stink because you're you. Man is rotten and low and disgusting. That's what religion is. That's why you should bow down and submit to. There's something to whom you know you're inferior. There's a being that makes you look like shit by comparison. Now, a lot of people feel there is because they do feel rotten about themselves. But it's not some supernatural being that they feel inferior to. It's all the people that they have kowtowed to, that they have made themselves submissive to. So, are you getting a flavor that this isn't morality? That you should bow down under pain of eternal torment. And you really have to take torment seriously. Because you are crap, and that's supposed to be, an enlightened, idealistic, spiritually awakening viewpoint. No, this enlightened, idealistic, spiritually awoken viewpoint is Ayn Rand's. You have one life and the good is to live it. Life should be a joyous process of achievement followed by greater achievement, of friends and art and productive work and enjoyment of this world, because there is no other. But look at the religion versus morality from another aspect of what I just said. Why should you be moral? Well, because you are fouling up the earth with your existence, and because if you don't, you'll be punished. And if you do, you'll be given some incomprehensible reward after you're dead. After there is no you will experience consequence. The non-you will experience consequences for your disobedience or obedience in this vale of tears. God wants certain things, and he's going to get them. Now, is that a moral code? There's this very powerful, let's take it a little less mystical. There's this very, very powerful guy, the emperor of Rome. And if you displease him, he's going to torture you. If you please him, he will shower you with money and women and whatever it is that gives you a thrill. So you should do what pleases him. Now, is that your idea of what morality is? Do it because there's this incomprehensible, powerful being you have to placate. No, morality is not about pleasing some other consciousness so that it won't be angry with you and it will bestow favors on you. Morality is cheapened and dragged in the mire by being associated with the kind of obedience you would give an emperor or a dictator or a guy holding a gun on you. That's not morality. If a guy holds a gun on you and says, "What do you think of me? Tell me." "Oh, I think you're fabulous. You're so smart. You're so intelligent. You're so handsome. You're so able. I am nothing compared to you." Okay. And if you say, "What do I think of you? I think you're a thug." Bang. Now that was stupid to say. The first guy was doing what was smart to get away with whatever he could get away with and get away from that god, that dictator, that gunman. But it's not morality. It's not, now when he praised the gunman, he was very moral. That was inspiring, wasn't it? Remember the part when he said, "You're so handsome"? Oh, it just thrilled me to my toes. It was such an idealistic thing to say. You're only saying it because you're afraid. And it's the same with God. It's the same with if there were a God, morality would consist of defying him. Not defying him for the sake of defiance, but ignoring him and living as best you could while not paying any attention to this crazed neurotic that runs the universe. So, first of all, the commandments of an omnipotent being who holds your fate in his hands is obeying that is not being good. May be expedient to do that, but you're not being moral. Caving in, placating, sucking up to power is not morality. It may be advisable in the circumstances because you can get away as a short-term, expedient, but it's not morality. Morality is your own dedication to the best within you to achieve something that's real, that didn't exist before, that you brought into existence, and that gives you pleasure. That's what morality is. That's the only thing we need guidance for. A lot of atheists who don't believe in God thereby cast out the idea of a guide to survival. If it feels good, I'll do it. Do your own thing. Dostoevsky's character in The Brothers Karamazov said, if God is dead, then everything is permitted. Yeah, everything is permitted, but there's still things that kill you and things that enhance your life. Real morality is about the effort, the dedication, the conscientiousness in succeeding in this life. Now, so these cynics, the Dostoevsky type, don't think it takes any discipline to succeed in life. Oh, you just want to be happy? Well, all you have to do is let yourself go. If there's no God, if nobody is watching over you, going to punish you for eternity, then you're going to go out and loot and rape and be gluttonous and, really? And where will that lead? Not to your survival. To actually achieve your own good requires a lot of effort, not painful effort, but a lot of dedicated effort to keep yourself on track despite temptations that may occasionally arise to do something against your interest. For instance, when all your friends are saying, well, let's go to church. Don't you go to church? Dedication to morality means saying, no, I don't believe that stuff. As opposed to taking the easy path. Oh yeah, I'll go with you. Sure, of course, I'm a Christian, or whatever it is. It means having integrity to your own judgment, loyalty to your own convictions and values in action. That's one thing it requires. It requires not faking reality, not attempting to gain cash or fame or friends or any other value by lying to others or lying to yourself. So, and there are 5 other virtues that I'll discuss later, but that it's not that just let go. Everything is permitted. Woo, it's party time. Then comes the hangover. Of course, a moral man who's lived by the principles of productiveness and self-esteem and honesty and so forth has no desire to, quote, party. I've never partied in my life. I have no interest in partying. I'll go to a party, particularly one where there's good intellectual discussion, but also one where there's just celebration and dancing and good friends. But getting blotto or whatever else partying involves is not on my bucket list. So the whole conception of morality is really neurotic and twisted by religion. The notion of morality isn't the discipline required to get ahead in life, to succeed, to achieve values that are real, that you're not making up. It's instead avoiding some external power's ability to punish you and seeking his favor by performing rituals that make no sense. So that's not even a conception of morality. It's a, what would you call, pseudo-morality. The best that religion can have is a pseudo-morality, a guide to avoiding hell, which is made up, is imagined, filled with contradictions, like you feel physical pain, but you have no body. And it has nothing to do with real morality, real self-discipline. And I'm not one of those who thinks it has to be painful, by the way. Real morality is not a new form of self-denial based upon the pursuit of the dollar or friends or of happiness in some other way, some other sense. Real morality, once you've automatized it, feels natural and right. There's a character in Atlas Shrugged, a great industrialist, whose attitude is once you've decided something is right, the desire to do it follows immediately from that. Because if you have no contradictions among your values, the desire to do what achieves those values is like, well, I want to get to New York. Oh, here's a flight, and it's very cheap. So this is a good way for me to get to New York. Yeah, I want to get that flight. You don't have to say, well, that's the way to get to New York, and I want to get to New York, but God, I don't want to. I mean, you might today. I don't want to take that flight because there are inconveniences in the. But then you're saying, I don't like the hassle at the airport and all that. You're not saying, I want another flight. I don't want that flight, or I want to stay home. You're objecting to things that are actual impediments to your easy transport to New York. So I said I have a value in an antique car. If somebody says, there's this good body shop that will take out all the little nicks and scratches in it and make it look fantastic, and they're very reasonable in price, you could afford it. It wouldn't cost very much at all for you to do that. I don't think, well, I guess I should, but I don't want to. I think, oh, where is it? Because car's of value to me. I want to take it to a place, and I'm eager to pay somebody who knows what he's doing to fix it, to spruce it up. Now, I want to do two things in the time remaining. Number one is I want to look at this incredibly widespread, silly argument that without religion, you wouldn't have any morality. Yeah, you wouldn't have any of that kind of pseudo-morality. But let's take it on its own terms. So someone says to me, well, if you don't believe in God, there's no basis for morality at all. And playing along, I'll say, and what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? People would be lying and murdering, and civilization would collapse. We'd all be starving. I mean, if people had no morality, we'd be animals and we'd be grabbing everything. Nobody'd be working. I mean, we'd all be starving in 2 weeks. To which I say, oh, so there is a non-religious reason for morality. There are certain ways you have to behave in order for there to be a civilized society where you can survive and achieve your well-being. So lying and stealing and raping and gluttony and all those things have real world consequences in this world, independent of any God. If people grab all the goods, like these looters, out of the stores, then there's nothing to buy. Then the store can't purchase more from the supplier because it has no money. Production stops, everybody starves. Seems to me like that's a good reason to not rob and loot and do the things you said. Seems like there's a real world reason. So if you ask them what would be wrong with there not being a morality, inevitably they'll give you a non-religious reason. And they have to, because suppose they said, well, Without God, there wouldn't be any morality. What's wrong with that? And he said, well, God would be very disappointed. Okay, I'm all right with that. Jesus would cry. Well, I don't believe in Jesus, so even if he does cry, what do I care? What does it do for me? I mean, why can't I live by the code of success that I've talked a little bit about so far? I'm going to talk more about. Well, if there weren't a cosmic punisher, people would secretly, maybe they wouldn't run out and loot right away, but they'd secretly, behind your back, be backstabbing you, as it's called, and they'd be cheating and so forth. And what's wrong with that? Well, it hurts you. Oh, so it's not a religious reason. Oh, I'm sorry. It's against the Ten Commandments. So what? So you see how there's a contradiction in their position. Either they say there are no this worldly consequences to not having this religious code, which is in fact the case. I mean, except that life gets better the more atheists there are and the more people behave without religion. There'd be less molestation of little boys by priests. Either they give a purely religious reason why you have to be moral, or they give a this worldly reason. That's what they really do. But if there's a this worldly religion, this worldly reason to behave one way rather than another, like to be honest and not lie, then what happened to the basic starting point? You need to have religion to have morality. You don't. You don't. And religious people are not better people. Ask an Islamist jihadist. Ask the parents who are training their young boy to strap on a dynamite suit and go into Israel to kill people because they hate Jews. That's part of the religion. No, you say, oh, well, that's Islam. What kind of answer is that? How do you know your religion is superior to Islam? And it sure wasn't for most of its history. Christianity got tamed in the Renaissance. Islam didn't have a Renaissance. There was no era of reason or enlightenment in Islam, and hence it's what Christianity was in the before about 1500. There was mass slaughter of non-believers, and people, non-believers like the Cathars in southern France were killed by the tens of thousands, and they were Catholics, but of a different sect. And the blood flowed like water, like a river. So it's the Spanish Inquisition and, religious wars and the Crusades and all that. It's not like Christianity is a religion of peace. It is when it's tamed, but all religions in the beginning, until maybe if there's some science and atheism, it tames them. All religions are based upon submission without thought, without question, to authority who can order anything. So of course they're brutal and destructive and vicious. I mean, look at what we've talked about hell. What kind of view is that? What about justice? Again, you got to make these things real to yourself. Oh, well, it's not that. It's what I hear on Sunday about be kind, be merciful. That ain't good either, what you hear on Sunday about be kind and be merciful, because it means turn the other cheek, don't fight evil, don't stand up for yourself, don't be loyal to your ideals in this world, just obey and be placid, and God will provide. But be that as it may, all religion has to be, when unrestrained, bloody. Because what stops people from being bloody? Respect for man, respect for life, respect for the mind. The human mind is the respect for the human mind is the source of America, the source of the doctrine of individual rights that John Locke developed in 1688 in the Second Treatise of Government. If men's minds are incapable of knowing reality, and his life is merely a test of how much he can bear to prove he's submitting to the dictator of the universe, then there's no such thing as rights. There's nothing to stop the slaughter commanded by the priest. And in history, there wasn't, until science and reason came in to tame religion in 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. So I wanted to say a little bit about the content of a real morality, and so you can contrast it with the religious pseudo-morality. Ayn Rand has developed a morality with one basic virtue. She said, if I were to speak your language, I would say there's only one commandment: thou shalt think. Only there's no such thing as commandments in morality. Morality is the chosen and understood, not the mindlessly obeyed. That's a paraphrase of what follows, thou shalt think. So a morality based upon your life as your ultimate value has to place a supreme value in the instrument by which you live, and that's your mind. That's your thinking. The reason why we are not in the cave, the reason why I'm able to look into this little man-made device here and have my words transmitted around the world instantaneously, is that a long series of people made discoveries by thinking hard, thinking long, developing new inventions, developing new methods of production, developing new methods of finance. You couldn't have the computer age without venture capital. You couldn't have venture capital without property rights. You couldn't have property rights without a theory of the right to life and its corollaries. You couldn't have that without the idea of you own your own life. It's your highest value. Animals don't have rights. We can slaughter them because they don't have the faculty of reason. They don't guide their life by an understanding of anything. They're on the perceptual level of just seeing, smelling, tasting. You don't want to wantonly kill them. You should respect all life to some extent, but not so much that you hamper your life. But when it comes to human beings, there's only two alternatives. Either everybody respects the freedom of everybody else's mind and actions, or else there's no respect given. When everybody recognizes that other people have minds and those minds have to function autonomously to the other person to live his life just as you want to live your life, when that is recognized as it has been in England since 1688 and in the United States since 1776 and the Declaration, then you have a flourishing society. Then you have rights, you have property rights, intellectual property, and you can have a computer revolution. In the societies that do not recognize the value of life and do not treasure reason, you don't have that. You have slavery. You have brutality. Men are treated like animals, precisely like animals, unthinking and not endowed with an inner self-awareness and consciousness that makes their lives sacred. So there's only one basic virtue in the ethics of Ayn Rand, that's rationality, the use of reason, the refusal to indulge in contradictions, the refusal ever to blank out your mind, work not to know, which is the process of evasion, refusal ever to evade. The full commitment to reason as an absolute in all cognition and all action. So you never do anything that you judge to be irrational. And you always work to expand your awareness to make new connections, new applications of old ideas, and grow your knowledge through your thinking. And that is your free will, according to Ayn Rand. This is her real breakthrough in metaphysics, the metaphysics of man. Man does have free will. There's no predestination. But it's not the free will to turn left or right, not directly. It's basically the free will to use your mind or to drift or evade. It's to think or not to think. To focus your consciousness and say, what is that? What's the answer? How do I get this? Or just say, whatever, hand me the remote, I want to veg out. That's the cardinal sin in objectivism. A life lived that way is a life thrown away. And your life is sacred. It's your highest value. In a sense, your only value. Everything else that is a value because it becomes a means to and ultimately part of your own life. But the virtue of rationality is a broad abstraction. It needs breaking down, concretizing through subdivision, really. And she lists 6 other virtues that all are expressions of the choice to think and be rational. For instance, independence is the first one. Independence, meaning think for yourself. Do not just obey. Do not just accept what the people around you say. Judge it. Think. Does it make sense? Can I verify this or not? So independence means thinking for yourself. And really, it's the same thing as thinking. Because to go by the say-so of others is to not think. That's what it means. Oh, okay, Joe says so, so I guess it must be. You know, Jesus said, the meek shall inherit the earth. I like that. It must be true. As opposed to what we did here. What does it mean to say the meek shall inherit the earth? The people who don't act shall gain power over the people who do. The couch potatoes will win out in the end, or the self-abasing, oh, after you, Gaston, no, after you. The person like the 50s housewife who erases her identity to serve her husband, she's going to inherit the earth. So that's thinking about it, you see. Honesty, the refusal to fake reality. That's the second virtue of objectivism. Thinking means accepting reality. You can't be thinking about a fantasy. That's fantasizing. Thinking goes by the observation you have through your senses. There are other virtues, but Nikos is getting restless. We have super chat questions to cover?
We have more than ever.
Oh, good. So I'll just, I'll take some, then I'll try and summarize in one line.
Okay, so we'll start with the relevant super chats and then we'll go to the ones that are off topic. So first of all, thank you, Mariolyn. Thank you, Robert. So Jose asks, how responsible is religion for American slavery?
American what?
Slavery.
Slavery.
In the United States.
Pretty damn responsible, but not wholly. Slavery is condoned in the Ten Commandments. There's rules about how you should treat your slave, not how you should treat, but if your slave shall do X. I have the Ten Commandments up here somewhere. The Bible, and it's not like some special evil of religion until men discovered the reasons why there are individual rights. Slavery was just the order of the day. There isn't a single society before about, say, 1700 that considered slavery anything but natural. Aristotle, one of the greatest minds of all time, said some men are naturally slaves. So others are naturally masters. So it's the childhood of man. It's not specifically religion, but religion is part of that childhood. And so it bears some responsibility. But basically, why pick that? Why not go to China and look at their slavery in 1776? Or Africa, the slaves we got were enslaved by other Africans who sold them. They were already slaves. Or the Aztecs or the Mayans. There was a slave society. Go ahead.
Another question. Super chat from Michael this time. I find it hard to see how Christianity will pose a bigger threat than the left. Polls show people are getting less religious with every generation. Our demise may come from a secular racial nationalism as occurred in Nazi Germany. So, Harry,
Nazi Germany was religious. Hitler was a Catholic. The Pope made a concordancy with the Nazis. Hitler did change a religion. He went back to some old Germanic gods that he liked better, but he was never anti-Christian. He was looked at it as a higher form of Christianity. But the person says, I find it hard to think that religion. How about Islam? Do you think Islam is do you think a jihadist with a bomb strapped around them is a lesser threat than Nancy Pelosi or Bernie Sanders? No, they're a worse threat, only that threat hasn't reached the stage in the United States where it gets to that, but it will. It will. And Trump was a big factor in pushing them towards a more primitive, brutal thing. I mean, what was January 6th about? It's the right turning to violence, just the way the left has always been violent. But there's no win in saying, well, the right is worse than the left in America today, or the left is worse than the right. I would say the immediate threat, and we're talking about next 4 years, is from the left. The left has all the centers. It has the universities. It has the media, aside from Fox and a couple others. And the universities are turning out socialists. I mean, it's well known, high percentage of socialists. So short term, that's the threat. But the problem is that socialism has been discredited. And eventually that is going to sink in. And religion you can't discredit because it's not subject to rational analysis at all. So in the long run, in the intermediate and long run, religion has a staying power that the left doesn't have. So I'm not backing either one of them. It's don't say that I'm in favor of the left or I'm soft on the left. I hate those guys, and I also hate Trump.
Okay, so Harry,
I've got a lot of hate to go around, I guess.
Conclude on the topic, and then we'll get to the super chats. Again, today they're more than ever, so let us know how much time you have, and we can try to do them all today. Or
okay, we can push them to other things, but the idea that religion is even neutral to morality misconceives what morality is. Morality is a guide to successful, happy living for you, the person who acts and chooses. It's the right choices for a being who faces the alternative of life or death. It is not, has nothing whatsoever to do with obedience to the arbitrary whims of a cosmic super spirit who cannot be known, which is what religion deals in. Okay, so Nikos, what do we do at this point? You want to take a couple more questions?
Let's take, so the audience appreciates you, Harry, and we already knew that, but today it's beyond imagination how many questions you have. Okay, should government prohibit the sale of poison, the type of poison that kills humans?
No. Why should it? It should prohibit poisoning anyone. You know, you can't kill anyone, but lots of things that have important uses are poisons. No, I don't believe any substance should be just prohibited per se. What is prohibited is certain acts to destroy, physically destroy other people or their property. And if you threaten that, the police will stop you. If you do it, they'll arrest you after the fact. If you brandish your gun or roll your tank down Main Street or start to pour poison in the water supply or whatever you have in mind, that is physical force, and that can be acted against and must be acted against.
Would Silicon Valley exist without Ronald Reagan loosening up controls in the 1980s?
Would what?
Silicon Valley.
Oh, Silicon Valley exists without Ronald Reagan loosening up controls. And oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, Reagan did some good things. I never voted for him. He did a lot of bad things. He talked a good game, but did very little. For instance, spending went up greatly under Reagan. So I'm not an admirer of him. Ayn Rand called him that ham B actor. The B actor is a ham. She loathed him because he was anti-abortion. But he did decontrol to some extent. But no, there was enough freedom before Reagan to have a Silicon Valley, as proved by the fact that even after spending went up, more loot taken out of the economy by Reagan, under the Reagan administration, Silicon Valley flourished. No, there was a reason in the history of science why that was going on.
Next question is on the field of romance, and it goes as follows. It's from Brian. Oh, sorry. No, from Jacob. What are the key milestones in a romantic relationship to ensure that you aren't rushing in too quickly or hesitating for no rational reason? I know it varies by person, but what are some key milestones?
Well, that's a somewhat psychological question, but I can tell you a few things that Ayn Rand said to me. One thing she said is, love is when you can't keep your hands off the other person, which I think is very lovely thing to say. The other is, I believe in love at first sight, but in taking a second look. That isn't original to me, but I don't think you should. I mean, it depends on your age also. But I don't think you should look upon it with great skepticism. I wonder if this is real, just my emotion. I mean, love is for enjoyment. So enjoy and keep your eyes wide open. But you should be able, I could say another thing, you should be able to identify what in the other person you love. Sometimes that's hard because you're not used to conceptualizing emotions and that sort of thing, particularly if you're a man. Men tend to be repressed. But you should be able to identify. Like with my wife, I knew right away. I loved her because she was good. She's really dedicated to morality. And that made all the difference to me. Didn't hurt that she's beautiful, but the main thing was that she was moral. And when I say she was moral, I mean she still is really dedicated to, concerned with, pushes herself to do what she thinks is right.
Good. Next question from Brian. Could you please give your opinion on the use of pronouns for transgender people? Example.
I won't do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the pronouns of the language are the pronouns of the language. Now, if somebody, undergoes a sex change, which I oppose, unless they're born with ambiguous sex organs, which 99% of these people aren't. If they actually undergo surgery and hormones and so forth and come out of it as a mutilated man, but sort of a woman, like a woman in certain respects, I might go along with calling it her or she, but not these other things, ze and, the made up words. No, I won't participate in that. You know who's good on that is Jordan Peterson. That's how he made his name. You can do a YouTube search for his criticism of being forced to use the pronouns that somebody wants him to use.
So our friend mentions the question, I don't think that has been addressed adequately by objectivist philosophers. And the reason, my friend, is because there are disagreements even within objectivists on how to address this issue. So Harry expressed his view. Other people see it differently.
Oh, I can tell you what Ayn Rand would say, but that, Ayn Rand would have been completely in favor of the sex roles as she understood them, the male as, she's written on this. Look at why I wouldn't vote for, what answers to readers about a woman president, where she said a rational woman wouldn't want to be president. Not that she couldn't do it, or she might not have to do, but she wouldn't enjoy the role. And so she was very, what you would call traditional today. And I am from that school also. I agree with her.
And again, no need to mention to our audience that there are obviously disagreements within objectives on this topic. And the Ayn Rand Center, I think, did a whole discussion on this topic. And I think Harry featured on one side of the discussion, probably at some point in January. Next question. So our friend says, I'm unhappy and feel lost. However, having a hard time figuring out what direction I want to go but I have having a hard time figuring out what direction I want to go to achieve happiness and purpose. Do you have any advice on working out how to find it? So our friend is
that's really something that calls for like my wife's coaching. I can say a couple of things. It basically comes down to observation. Observe the kind of activities you like doing and observe the principle behind them. For instance, maybe you like doing crossword puzzles. And the principle behind ask yourself, why do I like it? Well, I like getting an answer that's definite, being able to fill in the blank and seeing it all add up. Well, there's certain careers where that is featured, right? Maybe you like outdoors, physical activity outdoors. Is there a wider principle there? What do you like about being outdoors? What do you like about physical activity? And some careers feature that. So it's a process of self-observation and question asking. But I wouldn't be in any desperate, I'll tell you two things. Don't get desperate about it. Just be friendly to yourself and observe the kind of activities you like to do and what they call upon from you. And the other thing was, you think that you're faced with a series of doors, and behind, I'm presuming, one can easily think, I used to think this, there's a series of doors, this career, that career, the other career, and you open the door and you go down it, and if it turns out to be a mistake, you're sunk. Oh my God, I spent 5 years I'm 20, and with 20 to 25, I went into law, and I really want to be a painter. Or I just don't like law. I don't know what I want to be. You think it's committing yourself to a path where if it doesn't work out, you are in big trouble. It's not that way. It's not that way at all. I know lots of people who started off in one career. I have a very good friend who started off in theater, wanted to be a producer in theater and had a certain degree of success, but then decided it was too sordid. And she didn't know what to do, but she was advised to go to law school. And for the next 40 years, she was a highly successful lawyer who loved her work, made millions, and did exactly what she wanted to do. And then when she retired, she took up another career. And you don't view the time you spent in one career as wasted. Everybody, you ask people who've changed careers early or late, whether their first career didn't help them in their second career. You grow. You get stronger when you pursue any value. And if you then say, hey, there's this better thing over there, you're not behind, you're ahead. You've got an additional source of strength to apply to that value. So don't fear the choice. Don't think it's irrevocable or you'll lost years going down the wrong. No, take some action. Put your foot in the water.
May I also recommend to our friend to go watch that episode with Charles Fanny and Amanda Maxam. They are involved in a project which is called the Happiness Team, and the focus is on finding purpose. So go to the channel of ARC UK and find the Daily Objective. I think it's last week with Tal and Amanda.
And go to my wife's website, Thinking Directions, thinkingdirections.com, because she deals with these both in seminars and in individual coaching.
Dylan, if you can put Thinking Directions, the link to the chat. There's also free sources in Thinking Directions, so our friend could also have a look there. Super chat from Michael. Has the Enlightenment proven itself too powerful for Kant to fully destroy? Or do you think it's more likely we'll be living under a quasi-dictatorship in the next few decades?
Well, that presupposes that people understand that there's a war between Aristotle, in effect, who's the grandfather of the Enlightenment, and Immanuel Kant, who's usually thought of as an Enlightenment thinker, but was actually very, very, very anti-Enlightenment. And Ayn Rand described him as the most evil man in mankind's history. So that's the basis of the question. Kant's philosophy is against the Enlightenment in every respect. Who do I think will win out? Well, first of all, no, the Enlightenment is not strong enough to defeat Kant, because Kant capitalized on the weaknesses of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment did not have a perfect philosophy. It had a lot better philosophy than its then enemy, religion, but having vanquished religion, Kant came on and he said that his goal was to save religion from science. I found I had to deny reason to make room for faith, is right in the introduction to the critique of second edition of the Critique of Pure Reason. No, I think he's stronger than the Enlightenment because he exploits it's like jujitsu. He exploits their weakness, but it's Ayn Rand now come into, had the answer to Kant in one sentence, if you can. It just demolishes him, but you probably won't understand it. He held that identity is the disqualifier of consciousness. And more colloquially, he held man is blind because he has eyes and deaf because he has ears. Now that is an attack that Kant can't survive. That's, I don't want to call it jujitsu, it's an atomic bomb on Kant because it gets his essential error, essential. But the question is there anybody out there left to hear? Left to listen. The influence of Kant, Kant wrote at the same time as the American Revolution. The Critique was published in 1776, the year the Declaration was launched. And he's got a big head start. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not wildly optimistic, but I'm not pessimistic.
Next question asks your opinion on would you compare the genius of Ayn Rand to Isaac Newton? And would you say Newton was a better physicist than Einstein?
I have no opinion on those. I think those are fruitless questions. If you read Newton, he's amazing. He's amazing. He invents the calculus, derivative of y with respect to x, that whole system, in order to solve the problem of where's the center of mass of the Earth, in order to solve the problem of can I take the force of the Earth on the moon to be coalesced into one point at the center of the Earth. So it's a means to an end, he develops the calculus. And he had, discovered the white light is made up of different colors. No one had any clue of that before. And what else did he? Oh, the three laws of, let us not forget the three laws of motion. The second law, F equals ma, is, the first law too. A body at rest tends to continue at rest unless disturbed by an outside force. The second law, the amount of acceleration is proportional to the amount of force. And the third law of every action is the equal and opposite reaction. Just summarize all of human knowledge about motion to this day. Einstein was a genius too, and he stood on Newton's shoulders. I think he got certain things wrong. I'm not one of those things, everything he says is wrong. I'm open to that, but he certainly was a genius if you read him. He went right to the heart of everything in a way that no one had ever dreamed of. You know what Einstein's theory of special relativity takes off from? The idea of simultaneity. Our judgments of what's happening depend upon the idea of what's the same time, at the same time. And if you look into what at the same time means, it turns out the velocity of motion plays a role in that, or it can. He thought it did. So, he was deep and integrative. So I don't care to say.
Okay. Thank you, Christopher, for your contribution. Michael wants an episode on free will. Might happen. Gail asks, do you consider socialism a form of slavery?
Yes. It's the socialism without force is impossible. the force is used to take away people's property. To take away what someone has created in terms of property is to make him work for you, not for himself. So if you enslave somebody and tell him pick the cotton, that's clear slavery, right? If you let him go out and pick cotton that he thinks he's going to own, and then you take the cotton, the result by force, the result is retroactive enslavement. You've made him have worked for your benefit, not his. So yeah, I would say in the sense of involuntary servitude, socialism, the motto of socialism is from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, which means you take the property of everybody who created anything and give it to those who created nothing, which means the enslavement of the able to the needy. That's what it means.
There's also the interesting thought experiment by Robert Nozick, The Tale of a Slave, which asks the question, at what point is the slave not a slave? And it follows the steps that Harry said, like, if you leave them go to town, but then you tell them, okay, at night you have to sleep at the plantation, is it then that he stopped being a slave? And then it goes on, maybe he can vote, maybe. So it's a very interesting thought experiment. Last question, and if I miss your question, people, it's not by it's by mistake, because there's so many questions. Bring it to our attention. I'm going to ask it next time. Last question. Are there any intellectuals that have impressed you anywhere near as much as Ayn Rand? And can you please have this? Oh, okay, then some good.
If the person means, yeah, I would say Aristotle. If you're talking about philosophy, but I think the person means contemporary figures.
Intellectuals,
contemporary figures, no. You got to remember, a genius doesn't come along more than once a century, if you're lucky, if you get that much of a genius. And she had the combination that is super rare. It's a once in a millennium of incredible genius, complete and utter honesty, leading to the development of a good character and a love of life. And we would never have heard of her if it hadn't been for she wanted to be a novelist, put it in art. So that's the only reason why we're here. That's why there is an Ayn Rand. I don't mean the only reason. That's an essential reason why we've ever heard of her. If she had just wanted to be a philosopher and had tried to pursue that career, she would have been probably buried. People wouldn't have listened. I can't say for sure, but boy, she had a leg up when she had audiences, huge audiences for her novels to call upon to launch a philosophical movement. And of course, her novels were philosophical. So I think it's a combination of genius, honesty, and being an artist that made her unique in the whole history of thought, actually.
Okay. Harry, thank you so much for your time. We covered all the questions. We answered all the questions. A big thank you, obviously, also to the Ayn Rand Institute, who is sanctioning this series. Consider becoming a member of the Ayn Rand Center UK. Razi and the team behind the scenes are doing a lot of work, and it's good to see that it's appreciated. But the more people support, the better.
Yeah, the center has sprung out of nothingness into a whole universe in about a year and a half. So kudos to you, both of you, all involved.
Excellent. Thank you, Harry. Thanks to our viewers, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.